And if you see here, this picture, you don't see any you don't see any signs saying no carts. You don't see any rocks. This was early on. This was probably shot around 213, 214. That was after they dug out the rock. Okay? But if we go in, I'll show you what it looked like. You see that? When I talk about retribution against a member here at Sundance, this is why I'm being... They finally got to me. I'm the reason this isn't here anymore. I'm the reason it's not here anymore. Okay? I had a meeting with Craig Eustace downtown. I had a whole bunch of pictures and maps. I went and had the plat maps. I had the plat maps for the front 9 where I could show where one access easement on this plat map is exactly the same as this access easement. How come we can't drive a golf cart down through here? When I bought this lot, there was a cart path, and when I closed the houses, this is what it looks like. Okay? This is an emergency ingress and egress. These people out here with not a lot of urban experience and urban design and living in urban places don't understand that this neighborhood has to have, this parcel has to have an emergency ingress and egress for rescue vehicles and fire vehicles. All right? You have a cart path right here that you bring in trucks from Sundance Parkway, right from here. From here, or you cross over here. And you bring in 8 trucks for hole-in-one contest right here. And they run right by here, but as you see in other pictures, we don't have that open right now. Okay? It was like this for 2 or 3 years, and living on both sides of this easement right here. The people living on both sides of this easement enjoyed privacy, free water, free landscape service, and complete privacy. People in this house and the people in this house were gifted this for 1,000 years until I came along. And when Woody Scouten came back out, I think Woody Scouten may have signed for a dummy, a fake that went all here, because they put in plants and everything up to that walk that was over here, that one I showed you that came over here. They had plants and everything coming. So I think Woody, when he came out, he probably bought the first one off, and then as soon as he left, they pulled everything up and did this. They filled it in. They put the tree in, they put the plants in, everything like that, and there it was. An entitlement. A redneck Midwest entitlement. And when I say I'm a victim of a hot heat, I want to show you that tree. Right here, that tree from the manhole cover on the sidewalk was 19.5 inches above the sidewalk. I'll give you some dimensions because I surveyed it with a water level. I surveyed them with a water level. When I got the letter from Woody Scouten decertify. I went to Craig Eustace, and like again, he was not threatened by me, okay? I don't know if I charmed him. I told him, I said, you're a Marine, I'm a Marine. I just want to bring this to your attention. I don't think it's right. People have told me that you got to have drainage. This looks out of place for me. I showed him pictures of Tract H over in Parcel 13. It's got a road going down. I must have made a convincing argument to Craig Eustace, because Craig Eustace, unknowing as to what took place here, he didn't know what, he wasn't in privy to the core group of people that did this. So he went and honored my service. When they say thank you for your service, he thanked me for my service. He went and got Woody Scouten. He brought Woody Scouten out and he said, what about this? And Woody Scouten wrote it up. He immediately wrote it up. You've seen the letter. It's out of compliance. It's been filled in. It's supposed to drain. It doesn't. It endangers the houses around it. Well, I'm going to turn a little bit here. Okay. From the sidewalk to the tree was 29 feet, and the tree is 19 inches over the sidewalk. It was 17 and a half inches. The manhole cover was 17 and a half inches, and it's supposed to be 19 and a half. They took 2 inches away from this foundation. When they lowered my permit, they did the same thing here. My house was lowered about 2.5, 3 inches. They lowered this one 2 inches. 1.5 to 2 inches. And where this cactus was, where this cactus is, let me go over here and show you. Right through here, right there, the elevation over the manhole was right there. The elevation over the manhole, which is right there, was only 9 inches. 9 inches. There's like 8.5 inches between this right here and his finished floor elevation. And the tree that's over here was 2 inches above here. If anything would fail with this drain, this is the only drain for 13 acres. All right, 13 acres. That's the only underground drain. Let me show you what you're looking at. All right. You have, coming down this street from that cul-de-sac up there, 2 rivers when it's raining hard. 2 rivers. You also got 2 rivers coming from there. And they're all ending up here. And if there's any backup, anybody any adults out there, any backup, anything that would have backed up here, where do you think the water would have gone? It's 17 and a half inches there. It's 19 and a half inches there. So between there and there it's not between 19 and 17 and a half inches. The water's not going to go through there. It's not going to go up here. Where's it going to go through? I'll tell you where it's going to go through. Where the highway was for the water was right through here. And when I talk about the surveyor, we were standing right here and he told me. But I'm making this video for the YouTube people. A lot of people say, man, you got a lot of bullshit. And I do. But this is why I'm being fined $100 a day. They finally got rid of me. And I'm never ever gonna sign any kind of paper that says that this, I'm going to accept this the way it is. Okay? And like I said, no realtor, I haven't found a realtor, I've gone through about 15 here, no realtor will go near this house right here. Won't go near it. Don't want nothing to do with it. All right? So what? It was built out of compliance. If you tell somebody that, I'll never sell it and I'll be in trouble for putting it on a listing in the first place. You're not going to give Buckeye and the government of Buckeye a black eye by telling everybody in YouTube land and every buyer that the house was built wrong. This is a forever lien against my house. It's a forever cloud on my title. I don't know of anybody, and I have to sell it as is. I have to sell it as is. That's why I sold this one as is. I sold this one as is and lost money on it, but I had to sell it as is because no realtor would put on a listing that our easement is out of compliance. And it is. Until you open it up, back up to golf carts and pedestrians and get rid of the sign and fix it so that emergency ingress, emergency vehicles can get in and out. I'm going to be a constant voice in the community. A negative voice, what you call a negative. If you ever watch any of Beth Mulcahy's HOA films, she got a ton of them out there. I'm the guy she talks about. The gadfly, the troublemaker, the person you want to put in your rear view mirror. The only way you're going to get me to stop talking about this to my neighbors and everybody else is to fix it. You know it. And that's why you put a $100 a day fine on me. You can't stand it. You can't stand that I'm still fighting this. I'll never, ever, ever accept it. And I'm hoping to send this film to a lot of people that understand the science of foreclosure, the science of foreclosure and liens. It's a science. People go to college to learn how to steal the equity of my house. My house has already been stolen. Like I said, you're looking at the victim of a hate crime. You're looking at the victim of a hate crime. These people that I outbid that weren't ready to pay $25,000 for this lot 20 years ago, and I did. I paid $25,000 for each lot up front. That's another thing you got to understand. Each one of these lots were $25,000 before you put a house on them. Nobody in Buckeye was going to pay $25,000 20 years ago for a 55 or 5600 square foot lot. And nobody from the Midwest wanted to buy that. When you give them a price of $150,000 and they go, well, gee, I can get a farm back home for a couple acres and a big house for $150,000. Yeah, well, you're not back home. Okay? And this was 20 years ago. All right? I was willing, because I was from the Bay Area, for me to replace this in the Bay Area would have been a fortune. To think that I could tie up these 3 lots for what I paid for them. And like I said, here we go. I want to show you the contrast. The contrast. See that? That's still there. That's a 24/7 access easement on the golf course. And it was built right. All the dimensions matched the map. That's another thing over here. Nothing matches. Nothing matches. Okay? When the guy asked him, it says, how? Right here. On the map, when the engineer asked the surveyor, how did that pipe grow from 89 feet? Right? How'd that pipe grow from 89 feet? And the surveyor says, golf course redesign. Double checked, it is what it is. The redesign of the golf course was, we're going to have that tee box there. We're not going to have water cascading down here through a catch basin under a flimsy cart path. We're going to run the pipe all the way down there. We're going to get rid of the access easement and the drain. This access easement, tract A, when we're done, is not going to drain onto the golf course. Okay? And none of these lots are going to drain onto the golf course. Okay? This is the tribal knowledge when you deal with a golf course builder. A builder in an HOA that's a golf course, you're dealing with a 900-pound gorilla. Now, when I went to rent the tractor to do the grading here, I have videos, they're online, and I want to let anybody know that's watching this. All you have to do is go to Seward Lasham on YouTube. Just put in Seward Lasham in YouTube, and I got tons of videos. And most of them are about being assaulted from this tee box. The golf course has a right to proxy assault me day in and day out. See this line of rocks right here? Everything on the other side of the line of rocks is play area for the golf course. When a person plays this tee box, that tee box, if they don't have control of their game, if they're playing a man's game and they don't have a man's game in their bag, they don't have the shots. I'm constantly being bombarded, constantly dealing with trespass on these lots. I've had 3 windows broken on that house, a solar panel broken on this house, a sliding glass door broken on this house, all from the golf course. And thousands of golf balls. Thousands of golf balls. And thousands of trespass onto my property. Okay? People just walk onto it like they own it. They go, and the golf course's mantra, their logic, their point of view is, it was an accident. Now you put this tee box right there, about 40 yards from my yard, just off line, okay? Just off line. I'm in range and down range on every tee box here, and you allow people to decide what kind of game they got. I had the worst approach. I played golf probably on and off over 50 years. On and off. 40 years. Work interrupted it. But whenever I had the money to play it and the time, I played golf. Okay? I never ever broke par in my life. The best I ever shot once was 81. And that's because I sunk about 7 long putts that day. And that's because. But the putts were dropping. And I considered myself an 18 handicap from the men's. From the gold, I could come here probably consistently and shoot around a 91, 92, but I counted every shot. When I first got here in this course, the greens were rough, the fairways were rough, they weren't putting enough water to it, it wasn't cared for. It wasn't until they sold it to outside investors that they started putting money into it, watering it, stuff like that. But we owned it. And I want to show you what these houses are burdened with. See these houses right here? They're getting hit all the time from these tees. These houses right here, this is This is the long tee for the 5th hole. I got a broken window in this house. The picture window that's behind this tree has only got a single pane in it. I bought the upgraded windows and it's only got a single pane in it because about 4 years ago, this kid, this gorilla, Jethro, muscle freak, on a cold winter morning, the first group out, this guy from either this tee or this tee, with about a huge crosswind coming from the east. The wind blows east to west in the morning and west to east in the afternoon. Well, in a huge crosswind, cold, hard crosswind, this guy hit a leaker. First time all day that he saw the wind from left to right. All day he's been hitting his leaker, his high fade, with a strong right to left wind that knocks down the fade. But he doesn't realize when he gets back here and he crushes one. That morning, that picture window got taken out. That's the morning the window got taken out. All right? My lady friend who lives there picked up the window, brought it to me, or picked up the ball and brought it to me. She goes, it sounded like a gunshot went off. Sounded like a gunshot. And she was crying because, and that's, in this house, that's the 3rd window that's been broken in this house. Okay? It's the 3rd window that's been broken in this house. All right. And that's about an $800 repair right there because they have to come out and measure. It's all labor. The window, $200 window, $600 labor. I haven't replaced it. I'm going with a single pane window. Here I bought the upgrade. When I first bought, I bought the upgraded gas-filled windows, and now I don't have one. And the reason I don't buy another one is because tomorrow morning, the exact same thing can happen. The exact same scenario can happen. I buy a brand new window and I called up the police. The policeman came out, good looking young man, looked like a bodybuilder, tattoos, good personality, smart. First thing out of his mouth, you realize this was an accident. You realize the golfer didn't mean it. Oh yeah, I know that. But that's not the problem. The problem is they allow people, they're putting this tee box out here knowing that day in and day out, guys like him are going to be doing the exact same thing. So after he left and I realized this is going to get me nowhere to call the police, so I quit calling the police. You know, until I called up Andy. I said, Andy. And I described to Andy exactly what happened. The guy who teed off on 1, he had the wind, you know, knocking down. He teed off on 2, the wind knocked it down. He teed off on 4, the wind knocked it down. Finally, when he gets to number 5, he's finally got a crosswind going the other way, and that high fade turns into a banana ball that lands here and takes out my window. Now, I have my stoop. I have a vessel there that holds all the golf balls that land in this yard, and they do, day in and day out. It's nothing to hear a ball hit the house here. It's nothing to hear a ball hit the house. You hear it, you go out to the front yard, there it is sitting in the yard. Or you hear it and it's sitting under the window. Or you hear it hit the side of the house and it missed the window, but it's sitting down between the 2 houses. It's all coming from here. Okay? I'm in a crossfire. I can't defend myself against it. And then over here, it's the same thing. We're going to put that tee box there whether you like it or not. So what? They hit foul balls all day. We consider every foul ball that's hit as an accident, unintentional accident. All right? But we're going to keep putting people on those tees that we know are going to hit foul balls all day. We know they're going to play. We watch some of the people go out the door here. They got their hat on backwards. They got a t-shirt and jeans. They're dancing around. When they swing the club, they have no clue what they're doing. Their uncle gave them a set of clubs and a bag full of balls and said, here, go out and have fun today. And they hit as many balls as they want off every tee. It's sickening to know that I could get hit, or a visitor could get hit, or I could get a broken window on the fourth ball. Some idiot hits from right there. He's back there. He's never played before. He's out with his buddies. His buddy says, you're going to love golf. Instead of bringing him down here with baby steps, learning how to shoot par. No, let's go back here. You're a gorilla. Don't worry about it. If you don't hit the green, you got all that bailout area up there. Besides, if you hit one of these houses, we don't have to buy the window. Look at the golf cart on the back. We're not responsible for any damage. All right? So hit away. Even though you've never hit a golf club and hit a golf ball in your life, we're going to take you back here and have you swinging for the fence. Right? No small ball in your game. Everybody that plays from back there that I see play, you can tell when they get up to the... Here. You see a guy get out of here. He takes one ball up here. He puts the first one in the lake, dunks it in the lake. He has to run back to the cart, get a ball, run up here again, and now he'll put one maybe down here, or he puts one up here. Then when he gets down to the green, the guy has no feel, no small ball. All he knows is hitting the ball long and hard. All right? We don't play pitch shots. We don't play chip shots. We don't play lob shots. We don't never learn or practice them. All we practice is hitting the driver 300 yards. That's our job. The rest of the golf game we really don't care about. As long as I can go in the clubhouse and brag that I had the longest drive all day, that's all I care about. But to anybody who is out there on YouTube and is still listening, if you join a golf course HOA, it's bad enough joining an HOA because you got people with human factor ego problems that they're playing out some, like I said, human factors. I've had 2 courses in human factors. I think every HOA, before you can be a board member, you have to go take a human factors seminar. You have to go learn human factors. You have to go introspect on yourself. Human factors teaches us that all the sins like jealousy, envy, contempt, dishonesty, whatever, groupthink, whatever, you got to learn that you can't bring that into a board meeting. Any feelings of dislike for somebody that you harbor for a member, you have to keep that out of a board meeting at all times. And you're not. These people see that I own this house outright. I have a little money in the bank, and we're not going to let you keep that. And the psychology of waiting, like I said, my September bill had absolutely nothing on it. No fine, no warning, no nothing. I haven't received any kind of a letter. I've sent letters to Caroline, don't send me any letters that aren't registered mail. Don't send me any letters that don't have pictures of them. I have been kicked out of the HOA for 4 years. I don't go on your website. I have requested that you take me off your mailing list. Thank God I'm off your mailing list. It would break my heart. Get a letter saying, there's a seminar for medical screening, or there's a seminar for retirement savings, or there's a seminar about this for retired people who live in our membership, and I can't go. My key card's been locked out for 4 years, and they send me a letter and say, until you accept tract A the way it is, with no golf carts or no emergency exits, you're not going to get in. We don't need you. We're trying to put all of this in the rear view mirror. We stole it fair and square. Okay, we put the sign in. It's going to be there forever, even though for 3 years there was no sign or no rocks, and we had free use of this. And there was nothing came through the pipeline then. When I used to get the emails, nothing came from an email from the HOA as to the disposition of this. What they have done is they've repurposed this so to keep this threshold from going down anymore. Okay? They had to protect the threshold. It was being beaten down. It was letting the water out early. Okay? But now, one more. When they get off I-10, the ambulance, they got to go down here to Sundance Avenue, go up Sundance Parkway, and then come in through here. But the trouble is, this is two-way traffic. So you got traffic coming out there. You got traffic here splitting, waiting to turn in here. You got traffic coming this way at a high pace. Traffic coming this way at a high pace. You got golf carts and vehicles coming in and out of here. Golf carts and vehicles coming in and out of here. And this is the hospital. So they have a meltdown west of here, Tonopah, anywhere between here and the California border. That's a huge pile of fog, haboo, massive accident. There's going to be a lot of traffic trying to get in and out of here, and if it's on a busy day with a lot of traffic through here, and the whole time I've been here, Sundance Parkway has just got more and more and more and more and more frequency. And when they get this all built out here, this was all built out with new buildings and new residency. Imagine the load you're going to add to Sundance Parkway. Now, I'm trying to get across the civil responsibility not only to the town engineers and civil engineers on the second floor, but fire and rescue personality, people that are the head of fire and rescue, the people who pride themselves in being able to save somebody. All you have to do is let us get to them and we'll be able to save. Those people that take pride in their EMT skills, take pride in their firefighting skills and everything else, you've limited them here. You've limited them here. All right? This fella right here, shortly after the sign went in, eliminating golf carts, that house went up for sale. Same thing here. I feel that the realtor had a buyer here and a buyer here waiting in the wings. Waiting in the wings for them to put a sign in. For Dan Veskerna to come over here and put 2 rusted rebar thing, he was acting like a spoiled schoolyard bully from the Midwest. I don't want no golf carts going by my house, right? You're gutting my equity. you're gutting my equity by letting golf carts go in and out of my house. All right? Yeah. I lost where we are. But as I pan all over all this, you will agree, we are not in Iowa. We're not in Wisconsin. We're not in Minnesota farm country. Okay? This is high density living. The people who bought here and wanted it all to themselves are from bucolic country settings. They aren't sophisticated enough to understand that we have to have service for ingress and egress. We have to have service for emergency vehicles. It has to drain. And to the people who live on both sides of these, I know I'm going to send this to Jeff Bubos. I don't have this guy's email, or I'd send him this, but you two people, you don't understand what's happening here, the phenomenon that's happening. If we have a climate change here in Arizona, say everything turns, and I think what happened in Florida this year with Ian, what happened in Buffalo, what happened in Lake Tahoe, and why the reservoirs are filling up, we have these, what they call bombs. I forget what kind of a bomb they are. An atmospheric bomb or an atmospheric river. Okay? I have a feeling that this monsoon season of 2023 this year is going to be a monster. And for the people who own, who bought, like I said, the realtor had a person waiting there and a person waiting for this one. And as soon as the sign went in, they called them up and they said, okay, it's done. The sign's in. They said, good, we'll come down and buy it. That's what we were waiting for. Get the sign in there, get rid of the golf carts, and you got it sold at full price. On the day they put that sign in the rocks, my equity in this house, not only did this house lose equity with its finished floor elevation that's out of compliance and a lien on its house and a cloud on its title, but also my right, my civil right per the plat map to use this easement got trampled. They gutted the equity in this house. They gutted it. I have to tell everybody now for 2 or 3 years, if I was going to sell it, I could say, you can get on right here. You get on here and go. Now I have to tell them, and these people have the right now to tell everybody, you can't drive your golf cart through here. This is ours again. We've got it back. You didn't replace us. We've had our lost cause movement. All right? We got rid of the feds. We got rid of the people who were insisting this had to be open. We've got the KKK running, or we got... Anyway, I'll stop here. I'm starting to get cynical, but I've been trying to, as an adult, make my case to the HOA and to anybody that may see this out here. Courts, the Attorney General. I'm like the Attorney General of the state. I was once, had Republicans leanings. I grew up Presbyterian, white Republican, upstate New York. I see the Republicans used to be the people in the pinstripe suits that were quiet. They weren't out brandishing guns. They weren't out in camouflage clothes attacking the Capitol. They were pretty much the most stabilizing part of our country was the Republican Party for a long time. It's not now. They've become a complete turnaround. Ever since the Republicans, through Barry Goldwater's race in '64, that's when the Republicans got introduced to Southern Democrats. And right now it's like the Southern Democrats are the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party are the ones that are being quiet, are more together than the Republicans. Okay? The Republicans now have got camouflage and walking around with guns. I'll close with one last thing here, if I can make myself stop. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, but I wasn't really a Marine like infantry Marine. I never saw combat. I joined the Air Wing. I got drafted, and I had a choice of either having a chance to get drafted by the Marines for 2 years or going in the Army for 2 years, or join the Marines for 4 years and go in the Air Wing. Well, I had to go. I was drafted. And I doubled down on my patriotism. I only had to give them 2 years, but I gave them 4. I doubled down. I joined the Marine Corps for the Air Wing. And that saved my life. Okay? Being in the Air Wing, because I had a lot of training, and all this training I had to go through. I went through almost nearly 9 months of training. During that 9 months of training, Vietnam was winding down as far as the Marine Air Wing's role in Vietnam. The Air Force started taking over, the Navy was taking over. They were pulling the Marines out and the Marine aircraft out. So I never made it to Vietnam. I made it to Okinawa and ended up going to Iwakuni, because they had pulled my squadron out about a month before. The squadron that I was assigned to go to Vietnam got pulled out of Vietnam and put back in Iwakuni through de-escalation. So I came along after all this training, and the bureaucracy of the Marine Corps, it takes time, you hurry up and wait. I finally get to Okinawa, and the squadron's not in Nam anymore. It's in Iwakuni. So I went there for a year. I want to let you know that on a Marine Corps base, I spent a lot of time on Marine bases, 4 years. You never see people walking around with sidearms. You don't see people brandishing sidearms on any military base. No Marine Corps base that I was ever on did you see people walking around with 6 guns on their side. The only people who had 6 guns were the MPs. Okay? And to think that now, 50 years later, 55 years later, that you've got Republicans, so-called Republicans, right? These Trump heads, election deniers and everything else feel that they have the right to walk in public with AK-47s and guns strapped to their side. Do me a favor, why don't you join the Marine Corps? All you idiots that want to run around with guns, join the Marine Corps, pick a war, and then go fight. All right? By the time I got out of the Marine Corps, I never wanted to see a gun again. I didn't want anything to do with guns or anything like that. The only time I ever handled a gun after I got out of the Marine Corps was when I went hunting. I didn't have pistols, and in upstate New York, when I grew up, it was a much different culture. The Republicans up in New York, and New York was run by Rockefeller back then. Rockefeller ran New York, and it was heavy, heavy Republican. You couldn't have a concealed weapon. You couldn't have a pistol. The laws in New York, which the Supreme Court just rejected or they rolled back, was in New York, nobody has guns, pistols. You can't wear a pistol out in public in New York. That's where I grew up. Nobody. You never saw anybody wearing a pistol out in New York unless they were a policeman. Nobody. You had to have a permit. And to get a permit, you needed about 4 signatures. You needed the chief of police, the head lawyer, the mayor, and everybody else on a piece of paper for you to get a permit to carry a pistol openly. And everybody went along. I grew up with that culture. When you saw Woodstock, did you see any guns in Woodstock? That's because of the New York culture. Nobody can have a gun without a permit. And now they've rolled it back. Everybody can have a gun. Everybody can have a permit. And you got these idiots, tea parties, or what, you're not going to replace us, forever Trumpers. I'm a never Trumper. As far as I'm concerned, since I got drafted and I didn't dodge to draft, it makes me sick. It sickens me to my core stomach soul to see Marines saluting Donald Trump. That phony, loudmouth, Nazi, draft dodger. You know why nobody in New York supports Trump, or people are blue? New York is blue around the cities and stuff. They got Donald Trump fatigue. We've been dealing with Donald Trump since the 70s. We're sick of dealing with him. He's screwed so many people in New York, but the people in the Midwest, you guys don't get it. As long as he gives us farm welfare and says it's okay to be a bigot, to be white supremacist, nationalist, that's another thing. Who'd they interview on TV? Oliver Stone. I saw an Oliver Stone interview. And he was talking about this nationalism that's permeated us since Trump. Everybody's waving flags, nationalism, nationalism, nationalism. He goes, I'm not used to seeing that. When we grew up in the 50s, nobody was waving the flag like that on every friggin' event. All right? I grew up, most of my friends that were my peers and friends, their father was in the war, in the Second World War. They were highly respected because they were in the war. They had seen wounds. They had seen action. Those people were highly respected in town. They usually joined the ambulance. Whenever they started a volunteer ambulance service, a volunteer fire department, or whatever, it was always the ex-World War II veterans who jumped in, and they were highly respected, and us as kids didn't say boo to these people. All right? And the reason they jumped in is because they knew more than the rest of the people in town. You had people that didn't go to the war. What do they know about wounds? What do they know about treating emergency stuff? What do they know about fighting fires and stuff like that? I grew up with that, and I also grew up with the fact that there are no guns, no pistols. When you went to a 4th of July parade, all these VFW guys were in the VFW, were in the war, would march through, and they got respect from everybody. No kid ever talked back to somebody that we knew was in the war. All right, we had complete respect for them. And the leading edge of the baby boomers, the first 3 or 4 years of the baby boomers were burdened with the Vietnam War. They were burdened with the Vietnam War. About 1972, 71 or 72, they outlawed the draft. So that means that 18 to 71, anybody born 53 or over, anybody born in 53 or past 53, they're baby boomers, but they never worried about draft. Ever since 71 or 72, this country has never had a draft. Now, the first couple of years, the people that were born from 46 to like 52, we ended up fighting the Vietnam War, or our generation fought the Vietnam. The first 6 years of the baby boom went on until the mid-60s. But the first 6 years of the baby boom was fought by us. Vietnam. Like I said, I never made it there, and the thing that saved my life, the reason I'm not on the wall in Washington, is because I signed for 4 years instead of, and the guy that I signed up with, he hadn't been drafted. They drafted me. They used me as bait to get 2 other guys to enlist. When I got my draft notice, my mother started crying, and she understood. She goes, I know this town. All right? We're the only family with the last name. We don't have any political influence here or anything else. We don't know anybody. He came here during the war, okay? So it's expected that they're going to take you, okay? Well, the very next day, after I got my notice, I got called by the Navy recruiter, and he gave me the option. You know, if you get to Albany, the Marines might draft you. There's always a chance the Marines will draft you. They've been drafting for the last year, people. Or you're going to go in the Army, or you can join the Navy. And I said, well, what do I got to do to join the Navy? And he says, you have to come up to Saranac Lake. Well, that was like a 40-mile drive for me, and I didn't have a car. So I hung up the phone, and I said, I'll try to get up there as soon as I can. He says, well, you got to get up here before your report date. You got a report date in 30 days at the end of the month. So if you get up here in time, we'll get you in the Navy. I said, okay, hung up. And 2 minutes later, this is the drill. Whenever anybody got drafted back then by selective service, it was common knowledge. All the recruiters in the area knew you got drafted. So I get a call from a Marine recruiter called Sergeant LaMountain, a local boy. I think he was from around Plattsburgh or something. He was home recruiting. And he called me up and he says, I'm about 2 minutes from you, and I got 2 of your buddies in the car. They weren't really my buddies. They weren't close friends. They were just people that I knew all my life. I went to school with. He goes, I said, who's that? And he told me. I said, oh yeah. And he goes, how about if I come over and pick you up and I'll give you some options? Because if you want, you can join the Marine Corps. Well, I wasn't looking forward to joining the Marine Corps, not in the middle of a war. But I said, okay, come on over and get me since you're 2 minutes away. So my mother told me I don't want him in my house. Okay? I don't want him in my house. You can go with him, but don't bring him here. So I get in the car, and both of those guys aren't drafted. They haven't been drafted yet. But they were on the bus 2 weeks earlier with me. This was big money during Vietnam. One of the local schools rented the bus one day for about 40 kids from the area to get taken to Albany for physicals. Okay? And these 2 guys were on the bus. And there was a couple other people on the bus, local people. Everybody knew everybody more or less on the bus. And when we got to Albany, about 9:30 in the morning, this guy came out in uniform and says, does anybody have a note from your doctor? And these 2 guys stepped forward and he says, get back on the bus. The rest of us, they treated us like cattle, like sheep. They ran us through, poked us, prodded us, everything else, stripped us down, everything, and ended up being that we were all 4A, ready to go. These 2 guys and me, well, on the way home, a lot of people were upset because, you know, you're getting drafted and these guys got a free pass. So these 2 guys that everybody knows, we grew up with them, we went over and says, what were in those notes? How come you got a free pass? You sat out here in a bus for 3 hours? Well, we went and got poked and prodded and everything. What was in those notes? The one kid there, he didn't want to reveal it, but people were pissed. It's like, how come you got out? What was in the note? Why'd you get off? Well, I have asthma. Asthma? you've been smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day since you were 13, and you're telling me you got asthma? The other guy was the son of an executive. He was like up in the executive, sons, daughters of executive. You never saw him at a dance. You never saw him on the street. You never saw him hitchhiking. You never saw him out socially with the other kids. He didn't play with the other kids. He was like an adult, a 17-year-old adult, all right? He was part of the management team that ran the town. And we went up to him and said, how about you? What was on you know? He says, I get migraines. Migraine. Nobody had ever heard of a migraine. On that bus, I bet you 9 out of the 10 people that heard it didn't know what a migraine was. Never heard of it. Well, those 2 guys right there got a free pass. I'll visit them later. But anyway, I'm in the car, and the one young man that I grew up with, they said, let's go over to your house. So we went over to his house, big old country kitchen. He's got a beautiful mother. She had a big family, a lot of children, but when she was young, she had to be probably the most beautiful woman in the world. Long hair, gorgeous woman, in an apron, country mom. So we sit there, met her, and she served us coffee and stuff like that. We probably spent about an hour there because this was the personal thing with the recruiter. We want to get to know her, you know, where my mom said, don't bother bringing him in the house. I know what happened. We're outsiders. We're never going to fit in here. I've seen this happen before. I grew up poor in a town just like this. So we left that house and we went down to the other fellow's house. Same thing. Mother with an apron on, big kitchen, sit us down at the table. Well, we probably were there 2 or 3 hours because he had a briefcase filled with all kinds of paperwork on, you know, everything, all the options we had, all the different ways that we could enlist. And those 2 guys, they didn't have to go. And because they hadn't been drafted, they were able to secure the 120-day deferment. And he made it clear. I was sitting on one side of the table with the recruiter. Those 2 were on the other side of the table. And he pointed at me and he says, don't let this happen to you. You see him? He got drafted. He's got to go. He's got to go. He's got to leave here in a month. He's got a month to get his affairs together and leave. Don't let this happen to you. You were on the bus. Next week, it could be you next week or in 2 weeks. They do this like every week or 2 weeks, and we get the list. That's why he's here sitting with me, because I got the list that he was drafted. Don't let this happen to you. I'm offering you right now the 120-day deferment. That if you sign up today, you're going to take 120 days off your enlistment. If you sign up for 2 years, you're only going to serve 1 year and 9 months. If you sign up for 2 years and 9 months. All right? And you don't have to start until August. This was the beginning of May. And you don't have to start until August. Well, they considered all the stuff. The mom got involved. Everybody was getting involved in the decision-making process. And finally, it was time to fish or cut bait. And he looked at the one guy and he says, how about you? How many years do you want? Are you going to join? The guy goes, well, I really don't have a choice. He said, I'll take 3. I'll take 3 years. And the recruiter made clear to everybody in the room, whoever signs for 2 years, you're going immediately to Vietnam. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You know, you're going directly to Vietnam. I promise you, if you sign for 2 years, we just had the Tet Offensive. We need boots on the ground there. All right? Johnson has called for like 75,000 people to be drafted. We're escalating. All right? If you get called next week, you got to go, like Mr. Lasham. And I sit there, you know, listening and watching this scenario, not really, kind of naive, not realizing what's going on, but they were using me for bait. They had already decided he's out of here. We don't want his DNA here. It was similar to getting my house lowered by my foundation lowered. Not only did I get drafted in my hometown for being an outsider, I got drafted here when they laid my pad. I got drafted to be the water mule, the drainage mule up on this lot. They put a cloud on my title forever and ever, and I don't know it. I don't even know I'm drafted. At least back there 55 years ago, I knew I was drafted. This was 1968, May of 1968. All right? So finally, after all that, I got, while they were doing all this debating and rhetoric, whatever, I started reading the pamphlets about the Marine Corps Air Wing. You know, and I saw that it's 4 years, and I've always been fascinated with kites and flight and everything like that, and I knew what he was saying to this guy. He says, look, you're going to Vietnam if you sign for 2 years. Promise. And I think this kid was looking for an adventure. He didn't realize whatever, but the first guy for 3, the second guy for 2, and I really didn't know these people. They weren't my crowd. I didn't hang around with them. I was a jockstrap. The one that signed for 2 years was a mechanic. I didn't know he was a super mechanic on the side because I didn't hang around with him. He was totally, him and I, we knew each other. We were probably known each other all our life. But we had different circles. Same with the other guy. But when he got to me, I asked him, I said, what's this Marine Air Wing? And he leaned up to me and he goes right in my face, he goes, you know that's 4 years. You know you're signing for 4 years. I go, I don't care about the 4 years. Just tell me what this is. The 4 years I ain't worried about. Just what am I getting into here? He says, you're gonna be a flying leatherneck. You're gonna be in the smallest Air Force in the world. You're gonna be in the Marine Corps Air Wing for 4 years. You're not going to Vietnam right off. There's a chance you may go to Vietnam once they train you how to fix airplanes, but the first dedication that's going to happen to you is they're going to pick your brain, figure out what you know, and then they're going to assign you a job someplace inside of the Marine Corps Air Force, the Air Wing. You understand? Well, all I wanted was to bide time. And ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a Marine. I can't ever remember not wanting to be one. So I joined for 4, and he asked the mother, he says, I got to use your phone. There was no cell phones then. He says, I got to make a call. He says, I got to make a call. So he called up his master recruiting center, wherever it was, and he said to them, we got a guy that wants to go for 4 years. Have we got an opening for a 4-year enlistment? And the guy said, yeah, but he's got to go in like 3 days. We can get him in. If he really wants to get in the Air Wing, he can get in, but he's got to go in like 2 or 3 days. He's got to be sworn in on the 8th. And this was like the 3rd or 4th of the time. And here I had until the end of the month before I had to report. But he told me, when he turned around and put the phone down, he says, I can get you in the Air Wing right now, but you got to go now. You got to get everything tied up and out of here in like 2 days, 3 days, and be in Albany on the 8th. And you'll be in the Air Wing. I said, all right. as long as I'm not going to Vietnam right now. He said, well, you're not. You're going to get trained. So I finally got home after my father got home from work. And the only thing my mother had to tell him was about 5 hours ago, 4 hours ago, he got in the Marine recruiter's car with a couple of other guys. So my father met me at the door. And my father walked around like a little banty rooster most of the time with his chest puffed out. He had a chip on his shoulder for his knowledge. He used to tell people, they can't pay me for what I know. They can't pay me for what I know. Okay, he had a chip on his shoulder. And when he met me at the door, he says to me very quietly, Mother told me that the Marine recruiter was here. And I said, that's right. And so I see this puffiness, kind of the air go out of his chest and shoulders a little bit. And he goes, did you join? And I said, yup. And you see him, it was like one of these Christmas snowmen. You let the air out of it. Next thing you know, I see his shoulders drop a little more and his chest go down. He says, for how long? I said, 4 years. Oh my God. He turned around, walked back into the house with his head down, wondering, I raised an idiot. I raised an idiot. I can't believe this idiot would join the Marine Corps for 4 years when we're in the middle of a friggin' war. He was totally disappointed. Well, anyway, like instead of taking the next 30 days to enjoy and say goodbye to everybody and have parties and stuff like that and touch base with all my friends before going into service, I had like 3 days. And in that 3 days, and on the day that my mother put me on the bus, the day before, she put me on the bus on the 7th. That morning that my father, she put me on the bus to go to Albany, that she wasn't going to see me again until I got home from boot camp. That morning, it's so different from now. From now, like I say, the dogma nationalism, the dogma patriotism. If your son gets drafted or if he goes into service now, when he reports, the whole family shows up for the swearing in process. If he graduates boot camp, the whole family shows up. The whole family is behind him. This is all patriotism. It wasn't like that then. My father got up in the morning like he did every Monday morning. He walked to work. He put the pail, his lunch pail under his arm at 6 in the morning and walked to work. The night before, he like stuck his paw out. Well, son, good luck. See ya. No money. You figure he'd give me a $20 bill or something like that, a few bucks to say, hey, you know, go out tonight and have a good time before you report tomorrow. None of that, okay? None of that. He put his pail under his arm the next morning before I got up and he went to work. I ain't taking a day off from work to say goodbye to you. All right? I said goodbye to you last night, and that was universally the culture back then. We weren't spoon-fed, okay? I never was. But that's how I ended up in the air wing. And if that kid, he got killed. The guy that signed up for 2 was dead by the next year. By that day, the next year, he was dead. 4 months later, he went into boot camp. He went through the grind. He was like a piece of meat going through a grinder. There was no training. Boot camp, ITR, staging in Pendleton, and on the line in Vietnam. He was there 6 weeks, and he got killed. When I look back on it, like I said, they weren't that close to me as friends. When I got the next leave that I got home, that I had to go on after he got killed, was about 2 months after they buried him. I went and visited his mother. just out of respect. And I held the letter that Nixon had wrote to her that he had been, and all this other stuff. That was the last time I ever went to see her and her husband. Because by that time I had been in 2 years, and everybody that was in 2 years. By 1970, everybody understand this is a lost cause. We shouldn't be here. The college students are right. And the first thing I learned from the Vietnam veterans, when they came back, I met them. I was in school for like over a year before I met any Vietnam veterans in El Toro, a year and a half, before I ever got out to a squadron. Spent most of my time in training. When I met these Vietnam veterans that had been in like Chu Lai and been rocketed and shelled and everything else, the first thing out of their mouth was gaff. Gaff. Give a. And you guessed the last one. Give a. And that was the whole attitude the whole time I was in. This is a lost cause. Gaff. They're making money. They're keeping the economy going with this war. It's a wartime economy. People are getting rich. The Republicans that own Bell Helicopter, the Republicans that own GE, the Republicans that own McDonnell Douglas are making a fortune. Everybody realized that then. So the thing was gaffed. So when I went to visit the mother and father, and his brother was only about 10 or 11, 8, 10 or 11, was there. It was hard for me to hold back and say this was all for naught. Then when I got out 2 years later, I went home, and the two guys on the bus that handed a note were so set up for the rest of their life as far as a career. One guy was set up with the state of New York as a bureaucrat career. The other guy was set up in the mill. He had about a 35-year career in the mill, retired out of it. All right, I got back, no jobs. When I got home, the mines had shut down. The mines had kept, the mines that were there during World War II and flourished during World War II, and then they kept them running during Korea. Well, Vietnam kept them running until about 1971, 72. And they pulled out. When the war started winding down Vietnam, the mining company pulled out of our town, and a complete collapse, economic collapse. I had just gotten out of service. And my father told me, he says, go back to school, get an education. There's no jobs here. They aren't coming back. This Virginia City boom that we had for about 30 years here is over. All the people who can't retire or aren't old enough to retire are going to take every little screwy job there is in town. Anytime a job comes up, they're going to take it. Go back to school. Look over the horizon. Please, don't plan on coming back here to settle down. There's going to be nothing here. And you look at it and go, how could it? This place boomed. I grew up watching this place boom. He goes, it's over. They're not coming back. They're never coming back. This economy isn't going. Where people who got out in 1972, the same time I did, went home to a town that was on the upswing, it was a much different story. But that's what started me on the road drifting, and that's my story of the draft. But I got drafted twice, right here. You're an outsider. We don't like outsiders. You didn't come in here and knock. You didn't have any passwords, no secret handshakes, you don't speak code, you're single, you're a non-Republican, you didn't register as a Republican, all right? You're single, you haven't joined any of our churches. What are you doing out here? Why would somebody like you from San Francisco buy into a community like this? All right? I've been putting up with that for 19 or 20 years. So if you're still with me, like the Attorney General, she always says I used to be a Republican. Well, I was. I voted for John McCain. And one last thing about Carrie Lake. How do you expect... I can't believe you question the election when you told all the McCain Republicans 2 nights before the election, you told all the McCain Republicans to get out and go home. Right? And you expected to win the race by kicking out, excuse me, the McCain Republicans? Wow. Wow. Let's be an adult here. Let's be an adult. You chased away a lot of loyal Republicans. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. Like I said, I grew up with idiots like him. I'm fatigued dealing with idiots like him. And like I said, it bothers the shit out of me to my core, to my heart, to see Marines salute Donald Trump. He doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have a clue. The only Marines that don't feel like I do are probably Southern. That's one reason I got out of the Marines too. That's the reason I got out of the Marines. It was a little too Southern for me. Okay? The segregation. I can tell you it didn't with me, but a lot of Marines that I knew that went in before I did, like 10 years before I did, they had trouble. Did they join the Marine in a buddy program, or somebody that joined the Marines when they did, if he was a person of color, and they played high school and they were buddies all through high school, played on the same football team, that Marine in the 50s, when he got down south and saw that there was segregation, here's his best friend that they've known all their life. They played football together. They won championships together. And this other Marine has to use the segregated stuff. That's one reason I got out of the Marine Corps. And that same group of rednecks are the ones that drafted me 18 years ago by lowering my foundation. We don't like you. You're a Californian. We don't like Californians. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. This is going on YouTube. Thank you for listening or watching. Anybody who has endured 3 hours, 3.5 hours I've been at it. Thank you for listening. This is my defense. This is my defense. You drafted my house. You plugged up, stole my equity. And now you've got a sign in rocks here that represent a lost cause movement. The people who put the sign here are the idiots that stand down on the street corner saying, you're not going to replace us. Thank you for listening.